Bitcoin value proposition. That's what I'm going to talk about today. Now, as somebody who's been marketing and developing goods and services since practically the very beginning, right after I started mining in January 2009, I can tell you that obviously I have long seen the value proposition of Bitcoin pretty much since the very beginning. Now, what is the Bitcoin value proposition? Okay, for those of you who are not familiar with Bitcoin, Bitcoin was originally developed, as it is stated in the white paper published by Satoshi Nakamoto on October 31st, 2008, or November 1st, 2008, depending on what time zone it was published in. It was originally developed to be an electronic peer-to-peer cash system. Now, what does that mean? Well, it meant that it was not only a system, a network of computers that could talk to each other and transmit transactions of Bitcoins back and forth across the network in a verifiable way across a distributed public ledger. There was also an electronic currency that runs on a mathematical protocol. Why is that great? Well, if you're a marketer, it offers an unparalleled and as of yet unmatched amount of servers that are running this protocol. And even though it's limited to a very low number of transactions per second compared to many other cryptocurrencies that exist, because of its distribution, because of its decentralization, because of its amazing uptime, even if you include the few hiccups it had in the first couple of years, Bitcoin has proven itself so far as an extremely highly reliable asset and form of exchange of values. There's really nobody that can stop you from doing that, as long as you're not under duress, of course. And you can send that transaction right away and have it arrive within minutes or seconds sometimes, even on the first layer. And yes, of course, other solutions like layer 2 solutions like Lightning will let you do those transactions relatively instantly. Nevertheless, the actual underlying layer 1 asset is uncensorable. It is secure. It runs on a very strong, however, breakable algorithm, because all algorithms are designed to break eventually, especially cryptographic ones. And that's okay. Why is that okay? Because if the algorithm is ever broken, well, there are others waiting to be implemented immediately by the Bitcoin core developers. who are the Bitcoin Core developers. They're a decentralized network of developers around the world who all have their own interests and agendas and who maintain the software voluntarily because it's in their interest to do so. Could they ever all collude and conspire to change the code to favor only themselves? There is an extreme high probability that can't happen because, again, it would be against their own interests to do so. Right? If somebody holds a significant amount of Bitcoin, then changing the algorithm, or changing rather the protocol, would work against them if, for example, they try to 51% the Bitcoin. If you try to do a 51% attack to control all of the Bitcoin, the amount of computing power that you would need is greater than pretty much all of the computing power available to the United States and many other countries put together. So there's an extremely unlikely probability that it is hackable in that way. What else is the value proposition of Bitcoin? Well, it's basically an energy play, right? If you think about the energy required to transact on the Bitcoin network, while some people will tell you, well, Bitcoin uses more energy than some small countries, the answer to that is, okay, fiat uses more energy than that to print, to distribute, to secure, and manage fiat currencies in coin and in paper form and in electronic form, because a centralized network has more points of failure and angles of attack that make it vulnerable compared to a distributed network like Bitcoin. Is it the ultimate cryptocurrency? Well, that is certainly debatable, but at the moment, there is absolutely nothing better, even though there are plenty of other great cryptocurrencies with great business cases, use cases, etc. But Bitcoin remains the 500-pound gorilla. So what is the value proposition of Bitcoin? The value proposition of Bitcoin is that you, as an individual, can have complete control over your assets in Bitcoin and whatever else is related to the Bitcoin blockchain that you've tied into it in a way that nobody else can hack or censor or modify without you actually confirming that transaction. Why is that critical? It's critical because as the world becomes more and more digital and software becomes increasingly important, Bitcoin offers a solution to a number of different problems that exist in the traditional finance and traditional value assets management world. This includes everything from securing the identity of the transaction itself to maintaining the assets in your wallet in a secure way that only you have access to. This includes transferring not only monetary assets, But as I explained earlier, other types of assets, right? Ordinals and runes are just a couple of examples of them. Tokenization of physical assets, physical goods and services, even virtual goods and services. So, all in all, Bitcoin provides this value proposition to anybody that engages with the network and anybody who holds any Bitcoin. And that is why it has such great potential value over the long term, for the foreseeable future. Now, you might say, well, Bitcoin's too expensive for me. Why should I buy it when it's $60,000 or so? Well, the answer is, what were you doing when it was $2,000? Or even $20? Or $500? Or when it was free? Right? It had a tremendous rise. It's in fact had the most significant rise of any asset over the past 15 years, and in fact, in history. Why do people who hold Bitcoin and believe that it will increase in value actually believe that it will? And why do they think it will hit 100K and maybe even higher, and eventually maybe even one day reach $1 million or higher per Bitcoin? And the answer to that is very simple. Network. Power of the network. As more people use Bitcoin, as more people attempt to mine Bitcoin, the network size grows. The value of it grows in terms of the network size. The survivability of it grows. Right? If you're familiar with Metcalfe's law about, well, let's not get too technical there, but if you are familiar with the different network effects, and if you're familiar with the rule that for every day that an asset survives, it is more likely to survive at least for another day. Well, Bitcoin's already survived for more than 15 years and is now likely to survive at least for another 15 years. What do you think the asset will be worth when it does that? And when it gets to 30 years, it's likely to survive for another 30 years. And so on and so forth. Unlike fiat currency, Bitcoin has a max supply. It is a limited resource. There is a determined amount which can be mined and which will likely be mined by the year 115, 16 years before it is fully mined, at which point miners will become transaction maintainers, as they already are. And they're already getting fees from that, and they've seen recently some fairly significant fees, and there's certainly every reason to believe that over time they will increase on average in the transaction fee space. However, the average transaction fee will likely remain fairly modest compared to many other networks, like Ethereum, for example. And the decentralization and scalability of Bitcoin is again unmatched because of its existing distribution across the world, and because of the sheer amount of people who use it. Even though you might say, well, people don't buy cups of coffee with it. People do actually buy very cheap assets with it, including runes and ordinals and other things that are relatively cheap, and transaction fees can be relatively modest. And people can spend at the same time, more than $100 million, $200 million or more, as much as they have, for sometimes as low as 50 cents. A recent transaction I saw was I think $168 million in the last week in May of 2024, and it was like $1.38 or something like that, $1.50 to send the transaction. Try sending $160 million through a traditional system for 50 cents. Right? Good luck. It's not going to happen. If you're lucky, you'll pay, a few percent. That's not insignificant, right? So would you rather pay a few $1 million to send 168 million, or would you rather pay 50 cents, right? Now, again, that's a financial value proposition, but there are